Good morning and welcome to INTEA Breakfast.
Good morning.
Please find your chat, type a plus if you can hear us. Feel free to enable cameras and wave your hands at us. For the duration of the meeting, everyone will be on mute. The meeting is being recorded and it will be available on our YouTube channel, just like every other breakfast.
Right.
Yeah, I need a coffee. All right, so today we're going to talk about learning culture and maybe try and demystify this a little bit. Let me just share my screen and we'll proceed.
Right. Yeah, learning culture. I think Sergey and I were a little bit we always tried not to touch this topic, but we didn't want to touch it for some time because this is sometimes gets a little bit too fluffy, I think. Sometimes a bit too vague. So but the time has come.
Yeah, the time has come and we decided, well, if it's so vague, why don't we try to unvague that, right? And try to correct this complex puzzle. By the way, this presentation, as usual, is full of pop culture references, mostly movies. Feel free to guess them in the chat, right? If you want to find out a breakfast, just type YouTube INTEA Learning in Google and you'll find our channel. That's the fastest way. And this recording will also be there soon. Now, yes, speaking of vague, if we try to just go on Google and try to find something helpful about learning culture, you'll find that a lot of those materials are either very scientific and they're like research papers and not very readable, or they are something like infographics produced by software companies often, and they're not very helpful. Like even here on the screen, you can just see that, well, how to create a learning culture? Well, create a supportive and open environment. Well, how do I do that, right?
Yeah.
Encourage employees to apply training. Well,
how do I do that?
Yeah, how do I do that? Yeah. Open boundaries to share knowledge, stuff like that, right? Or you can see another piece over there, understand and anchor the need for a learning culture. Well, what's that? So all of these things are a little bit kind of like those self-help books, right? Where like, do you want to be happy? Well, be happy, right?
Yeah.
So stop being sad. Like that is the most practical advice you're going to get. So we decided to first of all talk to Dinah, and Dinah is our colleague and certified anthropologist, not certified, but educated, and one of the directors here at INTEA. We talked about anthropology and we talked about culture a little bit, and we decided to take a look at the learning culture through the lens of essentially just a culture, right? And we decided to trying to understand what's a culture in the first place, right? Before we get to learning. And I found two definitions, right? It's, like every student report today starts with a Wikipedia quote, but this is not from Wikipedia, this is from a smarter book. So one definition is that the culture is the ideas, customs, and social behaviors. And the other one is that these are shared and learned rules and standards for generating behavior. And you obviously can see that culture is about behavior, right? Culture is about what we think and what we do, and it manifests in action, right? If you remember our first breakfast of this season, we asked the question, well, if a tree falls in the wood and there is nobody to see that, does it make a sound, right? So if there is culture which does not manifest itself in any artifacts or actions or behaviors, then is it a culture at all? So we decided to look at different actions and behaviors that are either happening or not happening inside your organizations, and maybe provide a few very practical examples from our experience, and also a few actionable items to go along with that. So those 5 aspects, if we just jump right in, are, well, first of all, culture is about sharing values and behaviors, right? Culture is something that's common to everyone in the company, or to most people in the company. This is how it is a culture. This is not something that only the management does, right? Or something that's written in a book. Culture is visible, and it's visible in relationships. It's not just written in a statement, or it's not written in rules. It should be evident. It's exemplified by leaders. Essentially, culture is, in a way, when we talk about corporate culture, it's something that what we do, no matter what leaders say and so on. But if we are trying to instill a culture, this definitely starts from the top. This is what we do. It's actuated in processes and in things how we work, right?
Yeah.
And it also should be evident in lore. Lore is one of my favorite words in English language. It's about folklore, right? It's about, well, in this case,
Yes,
it's about
these are the stories we tell each other.
It's the stories we tell each other, and it's the stories we create, and it also has to do with mythology. I think we spoke about mythology earlier. So let's jump into those 5 dimensions, so to say, and see how they manifest. And we'll start with values. So this is actually from Ravis. When I said that I will talk about learning culture, he said, "Well, I know a company that has learning culture."
No, the story goes that, and there's one particularly brilliant country in this world called Norway. Yes, and we do work, and me personally, quite a lot with people from Norway, with Norwegian companies, and always when we talked about examples, when my clients from Norway tried to explain what they're trying to achieve, then they would always bring up this company, and the name of the company is Telenor. It's a telco provider, I think the biggest telecommunication company in Norway. And they would always tell me, you know what, there's Telenor in Norway. They have a brilliant learning culture.
Right.
I've heard that from at least 5 different people. And when Sergey asked me, so we started talk with Sergey, so how we have to do something about learning culture, and do we have good examples? And it kind of just popped my mind. So what we did yesterday,
we actually, the idea was that, hey, let's go and look at core values that companies proclaim on their website, and see if we know any learning organization, and see how it matches with their values.
Yeah.
And the first one we went to was Telenor, and here is
and here's
a screenshot from their core values. Well, first of all, they don't talk about values as much as they talk about behaviors, which is an amazing thing in itself, right? We always strive for everything being actionable in learning and in everything that we do.
And the first one goes straight, it has the word learning.
Right. We believe growth comes from learning every day. That is what they start their core values and their core behaviors with, and no wonder that this is the learning organization. This is I was like really amazed at that, because when we started that, I thought, well, we would have to hunt around for those learning angles in those core values and see what it.
No, but it's actually it's present there.
It's definitely present there. The other company that I decided to just randomly check, more or less, was another Scandinavian company, a huge one, and it's an innovative company and so on, and see what their values are. And that was IKEA. And IKEA, well, first of all, IKEA has 8 values, which I think is a little bit too much. And you can see kind of probably the 9th value is bureaucracy.
No, it's led by example.
No, it's the 8th one.
Okay.
Right, but the 9th one is bureaucracy, because they have like 8, not 3 or 4. So none of those have to do with learning at all, right? There's something about renewing and improving, which probably entails learning and so on, but they never postulate anything like that. For example, simplicity, which IKEA is known for, and I use IKEA as an example of simplicity in some of my lectures, is definitely there. cost consciousness is definitely there. I'm sure that learning is impacted by cost consciousness all the time and so on. But learning per se or anything of that nature isn't there. And IKEA, we have not worked with IKEA too much to really be sure if they are like a great learning organization.
But I think
it's not brought up as such.
It's not brought up as such, and of course, it's much harder to instill or grow learning culture in an organization where values do not support that, where you have to really figure out how to put those two together, right? It's harder for learning people to work in such environment.
Yeah. So a question to the audience, off top of your head, unless you've Googled that already, do you know your company's values? Or if you're from INTEA, then do we post?
We have behaviors.
We have behaviors.
We have behaviors.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you know that? Tell us.
Yeah.
Do you repeat them every morning? did you repeat them today? Right. So we wanted to take one step closer and look at some companies that are more familiar to us and that we actually work with. And the first company that I wanted to go ahead with, because I know for a fact, again, that this is a very much learning organization.
Yeah.
Right. And we know that because we worked with them for what, for 10 years?
10 years.
10
yeah.
years, something like that. And that's Sweatbank. And Sweatbank values, we actually know them. We've done a
by
course.
heart.
Yeah, we've done a course on them, maybe twice.
Yeah.
So Sweatbank are open, simple, and caring. These are their kind of new values. They have been, I know that because we've, well, first of all, Sweatbank has been around for decades. And we've done a course on these three. So, at some point there was a change when they introduced that.
7 years ago, 8 years ago, something like that.
The point of introduction of these values was to get rid of this old banking behavior of red tape, of those things that kind of plague organizations which are kind of mature, and learning is not there. We can assume that's because it's already ingrained into the culture. You don't have to really postulate that, and we'll jump back to that in a second. So go ahead.
No, just but the thing is that if you are a company that already has learning culture, you don't need to promote it as a separate thing, right?
Well, and you make a choice, right?
You make a choice, yeah.
Right.
You make a choice,
and then you prioritize something about that.
But on the other hand, when you look at these values are not postulating learning directly, but they are very helpful for the learning culture.
Yeah, that's actually interesting how the values kind of strike back when you start doing something, because as we know, when we start building learning, it's very easy to get entangled in complex phrasing, in
not caring about the learner,
in creating unnecessary complexity where it shouldn't be, in not being open and being very superficial about things, right? We've talked about sincerity in our learning design breakfast, I think, where sometimes when we create learning, it's kind of reiterating things that we kind of must be, must do, must feel, but we actually don't.
Yeah.
And we do not level with our learners, and we're not very open to them, right? So grabbing these three values and applying them to a course or a slide even has been very helpful to us. We've used this as a secret weapon. You sit with Sweatbank SME, and they're trying to argue that this is how they want the slide to be, or this how they want the course to be structured, and then you just grab this three secret weapons and throw it at them and say, hey, do you know your values? Open, simple, and caring.
Yeah, this is neither of them.
This is definitely not simple.
We're not there.
Let's start there. So that's very useful for us in doing learning. So I guess Sweatbank is mature enough to even reverse this whole game where values impact learning rather than learning tries to be on the values list. But let's contrast this to an organization which is way younger. It's preschool old, I would say. What, about 4 years?
4 years, yeah.
Right. So Luminor is another Baltic bank, and when I looked at their values, like curiosity is right there, and also notice that these values are also very much behavioral and actionable, right? Curiosity is not something that we feel. Curiosity is essentially something that we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and curiosity is right there. Number one, drive the change for better tomorrow through learning, essentially, right? And I like curiosity instead of learning even more because it's a wider and in a way more
Purposeful
thing.
Yeah.
Exactly, right. So
so you can see how the value thing works there. So I think, yeah, on one hand, it's very good when learning is in the values, yeah, directly or indirectly. On the other hand, the values have to be supporting learning.
And you also have to understand that, when you create an organization today, or you decide to make a big change right now, then you want to put learning as one of those values right there for everyone to see, for everyone to sign underneath that, from CEO, who obviously kind of signs on those things, to every new employee who gets hired and kind of looks at those values as well. So this, when you're trying to build this culture in an organization that's essentially has just been created, or in case of Luminor, as you know, these are two banks combined, and there's a culture clash, and probably you want to abandon some of the old ways and so on and so on, move ahead. So yeah, that's values, but let's jump into something that's more actionable. Here's an action point for you. So if you want to achieve learning culture, right? If you want the culture to change, well, either make learning a value, right? You have 3 or 4 values, make learning one of those. Or if you can't do that, right, you probably can't put it on the values list, this week or next week. It doesn't happen too often. You can formulate your own set of values. I was looking for Ernst & Young values, a huge learning organization, obviously, one of the big 4 audit companies, and the values are super vague. They have like 4 websites about values, nowhere at least like actual values. But they have a training center, which, as often is the case in this type of organizations, is open to the world, right? They educate not only their own, but also others. And they have actually their own set of values for instance. I encourage you to actually go ahead and find it for yourselves. But it's also helpful to formulate your own values, right? We are Company X training or Company X Academy, whatever you call yourselves. Then formulate your own values. Maybe your company even doesn't have any values, so postulate it. Formulate your own, and through that you start communicating, and through that communication you start building that culture. And you explain, like, why do we learn? Because I didn't want to go into that, but still I think it's important to say that learning, when you formulate those values, learning can have very different purposes. Like, why do we learn? Why do we train you? Why do we learn? Why do you learn with us? Is it to make our company better, or is it to make you better? Right, very different values. Is it to make sure that our products are excellent and that we earn as much profits as possible, or is it to make the world a better place? Those are very different things, and you as a training center can even formulate your own values for yourselves and start communicating. We'll get to that right now. Start communicating those to the world so that the culture begins forming, because that's one of the 5 pillars of that, essentially. Right. So the next pillar, or rather 2 pillars, I think they're combined there, was about leadership and making things visible, right? And there are a couple of questions that we wanted you to ask yourselves. The first one is, well, how do you know that you have a learning culture or a good learning culture? Is by asking, like, who decides that the learners need to learn? Is it us? Is it the top-down approach where we say that you need to be trained on that? It kind of, I think, clicks with the first breakfast when we were talking about maturity. And the more mature organization with a better culture will understand that people know when they need to learn and know that they need to learn. If they don't, that means your learning culture isn't there or is immature, and you can start on working on that. So, but at the beginning, just ask yourself, like, do we tell them that you need to learn that, or do they tell us that they need to learn that, right? And then the question is, what happens next? How do they access this learning? Is it something that my need for learning arises, and I can go, I have this learning hunger, and I go someplace curated by my company to satisfy that hunger? Or do I file a request and wait for that and see what happens? Because as an example, here at INTEA, right? If you're new to this company, it's important for you. You can actually ask for learning pretty much anything, right? So it well, probably has to be remotely job related, and we'll get to that as well. But you can ask for being learned. People do that, right? So an illustrator might come to us and say, hey, there is a course on animation that I found, and I want to complete that, and I'll have a new skill. And we would say, yes, absolutely. And then we've probably already, with the animation work that we've done, we've paid for this course 10 times over. But it's initiated by the people, right? It's not Bravis walking around and saying, hey, we have this client request about animation. Does anyone know how to do that? No one does. Okay,
let's train somebody.
Let's train somebody, right? Or I think that we'll be able to sell it. Let's train somebody. So it's the question of
chicken and egg.
Chicken and egg. Yeah. Where does it originate?
Yeah.
Right. And what happens next? Right. How long do you have to wait to satisfy that hunger, and whether that can be satisfied right within the company, or you have to input your own effort into that, and so on and so on. Maybe pay your own money sometimes. And then a super important question is, well, who can actually not just learn, but also teach? A lot of companies are very strict about that, right? Only the training center can disseminate training that is verified and curated, and the SMEs are kind of behind this firewall of the training center, and all the courses are kind of certified and published by one organization only, and there's a monopoly on training essentially within the company.
Always a bad idea.
Yeah, monopoly is rarely, if ever, a good thing.
Yeah.
And it definitely shouldn't be in this case, right? So
because formality, I think the trick here is that, of course, you want to control learning, you want to have that mandatory agenda and so on, but the question is, aren't we killing informal learning by that?
Yeah.
Aren't the managers discouraged from doing ad hoc training because they are used to training coming only one way? So kind of there's a certain behavior, certain process that kind of limits them. So because a good learning culture, at least instinctively, I think, is where people learn without being pushed to do that. So you have to balance.
Yeah, I mean, like, try to put yourselves in the shoes of a manager who has certain people under his management, and that manager decides that they want to do a training session, right? What happens next? Well, first of all, will this ever occur to them?
Yeah.
And can we make sure that it occurs to them from time to time, right? Rather than waiting for you to do something or filing a request with you for training, can they actually do their own training? And how can you support them? And supporting is not just about, hey, we'll find you a room with a projector large enough to fit everybody, and we'll bring coffee or cater for this mini conference that you want to do, and so on. But also, can you support them in making this training great? Because not everyone is a trainer, not everyone knows how to do that. And as we all know, that's an actual skill, an actual learnable, trainable skill that a manager can learn, right? And then a manager can become a trainer, and instead of waiting for the whole loop of, hey, I filed a request with the training center, and they promised that at some point they will get to that and organize something and so on and so on. They can actually do it themselves, and for that they need to have the willingness, right? They have to be actually aware of that opportunity at all. And if they aren't, that again, that's a learning culture lacking. And they have to be supported not just with resources, but also with knowledge and skills. So essentially, you can train everyone to be a trainer. Maybe take a lot of yourself, maybe speed up the training delivery, maybe let go a little bit of the reins, because not everyone will do a good training and correct training and exactly the way you imagine that. But that actually might be a better training in the end. And support them in maybe gathering more people, or recording that and disseminating this to more people in the whole organization and so on. So an action point here, I would say that take a careful look at how your relationships with learners are built, and see where you can bring in the bottom-up element rather than top-down relationship, and try and make everyone a trainer. Like you'll be amazed at how skillful people are in the management positions at training, sometimes naturally. But if you support and encourage them, the amount of training, not just created but also consumed, will increase, and you will, for example, you will avoid that constant fight between the management, who's like, why are they learning something again, right? They need to work, right? The time of work last month was like 12 hours per person. That's a huge amount of time spent on training and not working, not selling, not producing, not doing whatever they do. But if those 12 hours were spent with them, that would probably make for a better result and less conflict like that. Always easier. So that's the action point, I think, for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Involving other people has worked. Involving people outside of your usual suspects, like SMEs, managers, has worked for many companies. I know about a story from Decathlon, a huge retail chain coming from France, but now I think also present here in the Baltics and throughout Europe. At some point, they said anyone can produce a course in our organization. Here's the tool set, here's the platform, do your courses, because we have, imagine, this is sports. They have thousands or tens of thousands of products, but everyone, you are a skiing enthusiast, do a course on skiing or skiing equipment. And then these courses would be curated, evaluated by the audience. Some of them will be, kind of phased out. Some of them will be promoted. So basically, this is a very good learning culture where people not only learn, but they train each other. This is kind of you could only dream about that. But you have to give that support that, Sergey, you've been just talking, and that support doesn't have to come with
and how we know that is because actually the tool and the platform is something that we resell here as well. And do any Latvian companies use that?
Yeah. But it's a bit changed. I mean, it's a 5-year-old story, but that has been happening.
Yeah, but the case is right there. If you want to dig into how to do that and adopt this kind of what they call a grassroots learning, right, where everyone can create a course, and instead of flooding everything with crappy courses, you actually get a lot of content produced rather quickly and very much to the point, way more to the point that you would expect. Exactly, or you would have done yourselves. Then that's a nice case that we can work on. All right, let's jump into the next one. This is actually a leader, so let's talk about leadership a little bit and how we instill this culture in terms of recognizing and avoiding that, right? So I think for quite some time now, we've been talking about how learning should be very directly related to performance, and that instead of motivating people to learn, you should motivate them to do perform,
and then they will learn to perform, right?
Exactly. Then they will actively seek out learning that helps them to perform, and that will be not the question of motivating to learn, and it will be a question of just supplying learning that they actually are looking for.
But the problem here is, I think, is that at that point people start prioritizing learning because they have to achieve the results. So
Yeah,
very often they would say, no, I better do some more sales than spend that day in a, in a workshop or seminar. I have work to do, I have my goals. So being too result oriented actually inhibits learning.
And they start also consuming the learning that's very topical, and that is very directly related to their jobs, which can be limiting in a sense if you're trying to train people on a wider array of subjects.
Or you want to be an innovative company,
right?
If you're an innovative company, you cannot be learning only things you need today.
To do the job that you
need today. You will not have new knowledge to build new products upon. So you have to be, so therefore I think the point is that you have to be awarding learning per se as well. You have to be recognizing people who are, I don't know, a bank employee taking a course on cryptocurrencies, although we are not offering that. We're afraid of that for now, but so you have
something like, hey, here's the bank branch that has done most hours of learning, right?
This year.
We are not saying that this is the absolutely best branch because of that, and then if you want to be the best branch, please drop everything and start consuming.
Working?
No, start consuming courses.
Consuming courses. Okay.
Then but we do recognize that, and in our annual awards for the most profitable, the most green, or the most
innovative,
the most innovative, the most learning person, branch, region, something should also be recognized. Now, the question to you, type a plus in chat or a comment if your company actually recognizes learning per se. So if you have like a badge, an award, an honor for people who actually do learn. Or learning is just something that we assume that they do. We manage the process and so on, but we don't really award people for learning.
And while you're doing that, I just remember that a couple of years ago we had a 1-year anniversary of a platform we launched for one of our customers. And of course, they are a marketing organization, so they really wanted to promote the platform, the learning, and so they did awards. And the thing was that they went beyond just awarding the best people in terms of how many hours you've spent on learning, right? And how many tests you performed. They awarded the person who did the learning earliest in the morning. They awarded the person who did the learning, latest in the evening. They created some kind of funny awards, and those funny awards, okay, it's a funny award, but that the message to the employees was that they care about learning, they are analyzing what we're doing there, it's important. So it's kind of, learning got pinned somewhere. So the culture started to build.
It's like, we see you, thank you. It's a simple thanks.
That's why
we're not asking to kind of make it a KPI and regulate people's annual bonuses with that.
No,
but a simple thank you is enough.
That's why you greet clients when they enter the store,
not when they leave. Like, thank you for being with us. You didn't buy anything. No, thank you. Then something that we've already touched is our learning overly topical, right? If you want to be an innovative company, you probably want people to learn about things which are not immediately relatable to things. And it works both ways. So you can, on one hand, you can see what people are learning about, and if they're learning very, very topical, then only the things that they need, then learning culture is probably lacking in that sense, and you can expand that a little bit. And on the other hand, you can actually start offering that as well. Try to kind of look at your learning offering and see if it's only job related, or one immediate area is always work-life balance, anything that's related to well-being of your employees that a lot of companies are now offering, right? How to handle stress, and not just in the sense how do you handle stress that you can sell more to more clients, but also how can you handle stress to become a happier human being.
Yeah.
So
what do you think about career path again? Today, I'm just, an intern in this company. So I have some immediate learnings to do, but if learning that is if I have access to learning that is meant for higher positions, that's also a way to expand it. And that learning, I think most probably is already there.
And also industry knowledge, and we don't want to make you a better specialist at this process that we actually do in this company, but we want to make you a better specialist across the board, so that we kind of are enhancing your career opportunities outside of this company as well, but we're not afraid of that, because we want you to stay with us, and we're already in this whole HR domain now. But it's also rather important to communicate that we want to make you a better you, not a better employee for our company in this particular job. So you can look at that, whether your learning is broad enough, and maybe reassess a few things. And of course, it's about leadership, and it's about what our leaders are saying. One thing is, of course, communicating this through values, as we spoke before, but also communicating it in other things. Like if we open the annual report of a company, then there's definitely a one-pager on the first page, the editorial by the CEO. Like this has been a great year for us. Or if you're an airline, then
that it hasn't been
we're still here. That's an achievement, something like that. But does that leader, the CEO, mention learning at all? Is this recognized in other types of communication? And also, it's not just the C-level leadership; it's also about the middle management, where are managers just annoyed by learning, and this is what they communicate as this part of culture, the gatekeepers to people that we actually need to train, and we want them to learn. What do they say? What do they think? Can we win them over? Can we actually give them something to communicate with, and so on and so on?
And I think here is an important point, that very often when we think about learning culture, we assess it by our employees' willingness to learn, attitude to learning, and so on. This is the immediate thing. This is something I hear from clients very often, that in our company, learning culture is not there. People are not, appreciating learning, and so on. However, I think that to really assess learning culture, to really think what you can correct, also think about the behaviors and processes of leaders.
Right.
Because if leaders, every time they see that their employees have to do learning, they're annoyed by it, as you, Sergey, were saying, then most probably will never build a learning culture. Because this is being, pushed down every time we do something. So the change of change of attitude on leadership is important. So the actionable items.
No, before the actionable items, I actually have something.
You have another movie.
Yeah, I have another movie. And I want to talk about the dark side. We already touched on it, but if we start praising learning a little bit too much, then the focus again can shift a little bit away from people towards their degrees and certification and education stuff.
Number of courses completed.
So that's imagine you have a meeting where there's this guy who has a PhD in something, and there's this guy who doesn't have a PhD in something, and means that he has experience, or maybe he has no experience, but he's young and he's seen other things, and his view on things is different, or hers, and when there is a clash, who wins, right?
Yeah.
So if PhD trumps anything else 100% of the time, then you might have a problem, right? If to get promoted, you absolutely need to complete a certain number of courses and certifications, and without that, no one will even consider you, then you might have a problem, right? If amount of learning becomes a KPI, which impacts your salaries, you will be essentially paying people to learn, and that's not a healthy learning culture.
People will be faking learning. They will be completing courses, not learning.
Yeah, they'll have their 5-year-old kids just, here's the next page button, click that 80 times, let me know when you're at the end, something like that.
Yeah.
Or I will open this webinar while I'm not, like we've all been in meetings where people are talking and we're on mute and so. Like I assume some of you are doing it right now, so that's fine. That's fine, right? But we just have to be aware of that, and there's a dark side to recognizing learning. But as based on what the chat is saying, we have a lot of potential in actually recognizing learning and saying anything from simple thank you to maybe running an award, right? The December is coming up, so you might want to do this as part of your corporate new year,
end of year communication, something, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So an actionable point here then is, well, first of all, make learning visible, right? Make sure that people know that it's there, and that people who are actually learning are visible and recognized, and that that becomes part of what we see and what we do, right? Some companies have this bell when somebody makes a sale. Why? To make selling visible, right? To make it tangible. Well, learning can be something like that as well, even if it's something like token, like physical things that you send to people who have completed something. So
and it's important also, that's a very recent story. Within 1 week, I have heard feedback from 2 employees of our client company. One came from an IT department, and people there, and it's not about IT, but just a specific department, let's say so. And people in that department were saying, and that's what I heard from that employee, that our learning platform, our courses, everything is very, very bad. Nobody's taking it. It's paying for us. So attitude towards e-learning as such was terrible. In a couple of days' time, I hear from an employee from a different division in the same company praising what they have, because the person had been in another company. He had seen worse. So 2 clashing opinions. So what happens, there are 2 learning subcultures, not sub-learning cultures. And therefore making it visible is important, so that those who are not the believers still ring that church bell every morning, and they are reminded of our faith, right? So that's a thing to do, because learning is not visible. Let's just assume that. People don't know how much other people's learn, how much they benefit from it. It's not, known.
Also, very often, I think we're in a business where when something goes correctly and goes right,
nobody's talking about it.
Nobody's talking about it, because
very often
this is how it's supposed to be. Whereas when something goes wrong, everyone's like, "Hey, we have this problem," and so on. That's the case in a lot of, like, in many industries. And learning is one of those where we just assume that it has to be great, and if it's great, we just assume that that's how it's supposed to be. So just take a little pride in that. Make learning inside your company visible to actual people who learn, and also make yourselves visible.
Right.
Here's a case from another client company where that company. Essentially, that's a whole industry. Essentially, it has like 400,000 employees, and they have an academy, and that academy is just a few people, just a handful of people, really small, overworked, understaffed, and so on. And they always feel like they don't make enough learning, and they're behind schedules and so on. But one thing that they actually do is they plaster their academy logo on absolutely everything they touch, right? They do a conference, there's a huge logo. They do a webinar, there's a logo. They do a presentation, they make a handout.
There is a specific PowerPoint template for trainings, not general corporate presentation. So if you do that, it has a logo of the academy.
Right? So people in that organization always feel like, hey, these guys are everywhere, and no one even understands how small they are. Maybe that's a bit of their problem, because
there's more demand.
There's more demand than they can handle, right? But for a very limited bunch of people, limited numbers, they achieve a lot, but they also make themselves visible even more than they achieve, so that everyone feels they're important,
let's be honest,
which helps them grow in the end.
And in the end of the day, we always need more money for training. So
Yeah.
if you make a lot of noise, it's easier.
Yeah.
So go there and make a case. We need more resources. We need more money. We need more attention from the management.
Remember how you have to, like, I don't know if it's a very useful fact to you, but when a bear attacks you, they say that you have to like get up and put
raise
your hands up, raise your hands, like make yourself
bigger than the bear.
Bigger than the bear. And
try to be bigger than the bear.
Try to be bigger than the bear. Try to make yourself visible. We spoke about like learning branding last year, I think.
Yeah.
And it's still important to create that culture, because things don't happen just because they happen. Things happen because we learn, we create this, like every movie studio still at the beginning of a movie will tell you that this has been done by Universal Pictures. Like, do you even care? Do you select movies based on who has done that?
Not really.
Not really, but they keep doing that, because it's important. It's a tradition. You can start the tradition right now. So, next time you do a learning course, make sure that it's branded as, Corporate Academy Presents.
Yeah.
It's important to build that culture. Now, something that we promised to talk about is this guy. Does anyone know who that guy is? Hey, chat.
Those who read the invitation.
Yeah, if you read the invitation.
The name was there, I think.
Was it?
No, it was not the name. It was just the position. Yes. We took out the name. So, anyways.
Yeah, so that's the mayor of New York from mid-1990s to end of 2001. His name is Rudy Giuliani, and he's credited with a huge decrease in crime in New York, which in the late 80s and early 90s was terrible place. As far as living conditions, crime rates, general safety go, and much unlike New York that we know now.
Do I remember those stories that never take New York subway, because you'll be
there was this line 6 or train 6, which was like a death trap for anyone, and there was some other line and this and that, and there is this what they call it, the main bus station in New York, Port Authority, which is like if you choose to go to Port Authority or to Bosnia in mid-90s, then it's pretty much the same choice, something like that. So it was terrible, and then he turned this around, and a huge part of that, and again, take this with a grain of salt. There's a ton of research on why this might not be exactly the case, and that might be a little bit over exaggerated by people trying to boost Giuliani's image, because it's all about elections and whatnot. But the theory of broken windows, that is something that was coined by Giuliani, and the idea is that if we have a building with no broken windows, and then somebody breaks a window, then within a week, all windows will be broken.
Yeah,
unless we fix that window really quick, or we don't allow it to be broken, and all windows will be intact for years to come. And it's about signaling. It's about saying that, hey, you can't do that. You can't draw that on that bridge, right? You can paint on a bus, and that starts a whole chain reaction of things that make themselves more and more lovable, and it snowballs into an avalanche of terrible things happening throughout. So his idea was that let's start fighting crime at the petty level, at this very little things, and that will stop this chain reaction of crime escalating to other things, right? So let's make sure that no windows are broken and then the whole building will stay intact. That was the idea. And I think even if that did not contribute 100% to the crime drop, which the crime drop was an absolutely real thing, right? Then it communicates two things to us. One, our environment speaks to us, right? Everything we see conveys a message. So our learning culture is about conveying things, right? It's about from the design of our courses, from how careful we make our presentations, to whether we brand things that we do. We always convey through small things, and then big things happen. And that means that sometimes when we try to fix big things, we look for big solutions. And it's actually my favorite quote of Rory Sutherland, who's he's an excellent behavioral economist from UK, and he was talking about exactly that. And he had this very British example of the train that goes under the English Channel, what's the Eurostar, the Eurostar train, and the train goes for like 3.5 hours. And the government they were getting complaints that, it's still 3.5 hours as opposed to like 1 hour flight to Paris or something, that is too slow. And they devised like a £5 billion plan to make it faster by 1 hour, right? £5 billion to invest into making this 2.5 hour commute, because you have to rebuild pretty much whole infrastructure. And he said, well, instead, what I would do, I would take like 10% of that money, and for the next 10 years, I would have male and female models going throughout this train and handing out free champagne to all passengers. People will be asking for the train to be slower. They will never complain that they had to spend 3 hours there, not 2 hours. And then it will be much cheaper and will achieve the same thing. So yeah, big problems do not always require big solutions. Fixing small things achieves huge effects. And I think I have an illustration for that from a company that we know in the Baltics, Maxima. It's a supermarket chain of grocery stores primarily. And they had a problem with, they started in the region as this kind of cheaper, lower quality, lower service chain. And they wanted to elevate themselves to be a peer rival to that other supermarket chain in quality, in service levels, in everything. They didn't want to be those kind of, we only choose them for the prices, right? They wanted to be the big guys as well. And for that, they had to change their culture as well, because obviously their own employees knew that people are choosing them just for the prices, right? So it's okay to be rude to people, right? What do you expect? At this level of prices, is anyone gonna say thank you to you? Why even, right? So they did a couple of things to change that, and they started really with small but very visible things. So they actually physically looked for what's the smallest and most visible things that we think that we can, because it will be cheapest, or with the biggest ROI effectively. So one thing that they did, they branded every uniform with a phrase,
ask me, I can help.
Ask me, I can help you. Because they were infamous for being rude to customers. And when you ask them, what did you move the banana stand? I'm looking for bananas, can you help me? And they were like, not my job at all. So they had to break this culture. So they put on every employee saying, ask me, actually come to me, ask me, I can help. And it's very difficult to say that, no, I can't help you. I have no idea where bananas are.
When it's written on my back.
When it's written on your back and on your colleague's back, on everyone's back, because everyone will, but it's written on you, right? So it's a very visible way of communicating something that will have profound changes in people's culture, because this culture of helpfulness will also be reflected in the culture of cleanliness, in the culture of produced quality, in the culture of absolutely everything. That was one thing.
It's like Italian police. the uniforms for Italian police are designed by Versace and Armani because they have to be proud of being police officers.
Yeah,
and they will behave therefore differently.
That's true.
Same here. Yeah.
There are some countries where you look at the policemen and they
You want to
look,
cry.
yeah, they look like car mechanics, right?
Yeah,
that are just got out. Yeah, maybe it's very practical, you know,
Yeah.
and so on. And obviously, Italian police uniforms are not very practical. But boy, do
you want to be part of that organization.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the other thing that Maxima, this grocery store chain, did was that their loyalty card, they called it the thank you card, right? Because it was about like, hey, we have to say thank you all the time, and they were like 20 years ago, they were really grumpy, like, hey, give your money, take your stuff, like get out.
Leave.
Like there's a whole line of people. We're so overworked, we're underpaid, and like I don't want to even look at you. I have to do my job. Instead, they wanted to introduce this kind of thank you culture into that. And one of the things, small things that they did, their loyalty card is called a thank you card. And again, a very small thing which costs nothing. You can call it whatever, it will cost the same, right? There's no additional cost to do that, but it has those profound chain reactions from that. So I think the action point in here is well, brand all the things, look at the things that you can kind of put your logo on, do that, and also make yourself way more visible than you probably are. That will help building this learning culture, because people will be more aware of that, and it will start kind of growing. Like, you know, when there's another definition of culture, it's like the bacteria culture, which grows in those petri dishes. Yeah. So it grows itself if you give it enough nutrition, right? It will grow. And as little attention as possible. It will grow. So, and it's comprised of small things as well. So think about that too. And actually, the third definition from those two in the beginning that I wanted to share with you is that culture is what makes us us. So try and think what makes you you, and communicate those things to people in your organization boldly and visible, and don't shy away from small things, because they bring on great changes. With that in mind, thank you for participating. Please type in chat, type a plus if you like that. Let us know if we're doing a good job, and let us know if you want to be invited again. You'll be invited. So follow us on your favorite social networks. We're on Facebook, Instagram, we're on LinkedIn. We publish fun stuff and useful stuff as well. This recording will be on our YouTube channel. See you in 2 weeks. It's December 10th. December 10th. Yeah, right. We will announce the topic, I think, beginning of the next week. Yes. And if you have anything specific that you want to talk about, let us know as well. Absolutely. We're always here to chat. Thank you so much, everyone. And have a great Friday and a great weekend. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.